everyone, welcome to DevSecTalks. I'm your host, Ashley Ward, and I'm joined today by Akhil Handa, CEO and founder of Earth 51. Earth 51 is an organization focused on helping businesses embrace sustainability. In today's episode, we'll sit down with Akhil to discuss the importance of climate change and sustainable computing, and the steps that technology leaders can take to make their businesses healthier from the inside out. Let's dive right in.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you for having me today. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. My name is Akhil Handa, and I work with a sustainability think tank called Earth 51. We're based out of the UK, but we have most of our clients flitted around the world, especially in Northern Europe. And our goal is really to try and help businesses become better versions of themselves. So that's why we're here.
All right. So one of the things that I was really interested in when I looked up Earth 51, of course, is that we're all very aware, it's in the news every day at the moment, about climate change, about how we need to be more responsible. And then I thought to myself, well, speaking to you, it'll be really, really quick conversation because in reality, we're just talking about computers, right? So I just need to get my electricity from somewhere good. Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's nicely put, Ashley. It's certainly the part of the it's part of the sustainability challenge that's picked up most interest more than other areas. So carbon, climate change are certainly areas that we need to be very concerned about. But as we've seen with the pandemic over the last year, there have been other issues that have surfaced or at least have been brought to light. So in addition to carbon and climate change, we've also seen growing inequalities. The acceleration of digitization has also created a disparity in certain industries. Women have been unfairly impacted by it. Girls haven't been able to stay in STEM skills for longer. So we've had a lot of issues beyond just climate change. So we have issues that we tackle with our clients around food waste and poverty and hunger and health and education. And it's just there's a much more broader spectrum of issues that are out there that companies need to take more responsibility for. So it's not just climate change, and sustainability is a bit more than that. And that's one of the fallacies that we find that companies believe is just carbon and climate change, and I'm doing everything I can. But actually, private sector businesses, for instance, have tremendous influence that they can provide societal uplift a lot quicker than government policy. And that's one of the reasons we try and work closely with private organizations to try and help them, lend their resources and help society at large across various pieces.
From a technology leader's point of view, if there are technology leaders who are listening to this, I mean, how do they go about prioritizing these things? Is this, would you, say, get engaged when we're doing a technology refresh or a project scoping, or how do people get involved?
So given my background in tech for the last 25 years, I do understand that technology refresh is usually one of the cycles in which we start to look at new innovation. Now, I think we are at that stage across the world today where we can't wait any longer. We can't wait for the next 3 to 5 year refresh cycle to try and inject change and innovation. So that's one part of it. The other piece is that the world's moving tremendously quick from an analog/paper-based reality to a digital future. And technology has a massive role to play. So everything that we do is pretty much enabled through technology and digitalization or digital tools. So technology, from our perspective, are the tools on which we're going to build our future. And given that importance, I think if you're a leader in a technology company or you're leading a technology business unit in a company, we can't think about efficiencies and just doing the right thing and ticking the box and making sure we are IT and keeping the lights on or keep the business running. This is a case about technology threading its way into all lines of business inside a business unit and making sure they're accelerating sustainable progress across every area of the business. So I wouldn't say this is something where it's an option to have. I think it's a must-have. And the quicker organizations can use digital transformation, the wave of digital transformation that they're going through right now, to drive sustainability transformation, that's where we need to make sure that, that's the meeting ground. Investors, employees, customers, governments, they're all asking questions of every organization. And to enable that change, that transformation needs to come through tech. So I think technology leaders have their hands full with this and should be taking this very seriously in terms of how do I enable my business to be a better business at the end of the day, more purpose-led, more focused on planetary goals, but also people goals. And that threads into every area of the business, from HR functions to financial forecasting, to using sustainability linked loans and green bonds and what have you. It's all tech-based at the end of the day. So how do we as a technology business unit start to improve other lines of business inside our organization, make us healthier from the inside? I use the analogy of wearables or just data that we need to be healthier in our daily lives, whether it be the amount of steps we need to take or keeping our resting heart rate down or what have you. It's much the same with a technology leader inside a company. We got to make sure that our business is beating in a healthy way. So that's my viewpoint on it.
Do you see though the benefit to the business? So if I was to say as a technology leader, I completely, I fully support this. I've seen the poverty that's around the world and how we can build that greater sustainability, putting climate change, to one side as well. But how do I translate that to the business? How do I turn around to my different lines of business and say, we need to do this, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it will help us as a business?
Again, the way we've looked at this is there are multiple inflection points through history where businesses have had to transform and evolve. And I think the last large evolution was with digital transformation, where companies had to evolve from an analog world to a digital world. There's some that haven't taken that step as yet. Some regions and markets are still slower off the block for their own challenges. But largely, everyone started to move in that direction. Cloud is a great analogy. I remember 6 years back, when we spoke about cloud, people thought it was a buzzword. Is it real? Is it really happening? And I think now everyone's moving to the cloud, or they've already moved and they don't even realize it. And I think sustainability is in much the same state that cloud was in 6 years back, where we've got a lot of wins behind our sails as a global business industry, where there are a couple of things that are happening which need to happen for a massive inflection to take place. One is you need to make sure that there's sentiment across the industry. And in this case, it's almost what happened with IT, where we had the consumerization of IT, where you brought your own devices and IT was forced to change the way they started to do things. We are having the consumerization of sustainability. There's a tremendous public sentiment to try and do more, be it just the millennials that are coming through, which are primarily they consist of 75% of the workforce. They want to work for, buy from, invest in companies that are sustainable or purpose-led. So they're willing to pay a little bit more. So you have incremental revenue streams coming in from people who are asking for this today. A lot of the new investment community and the young generation that's coming through wants to put their money not in companies that are drilling for oil, to be honest. They're looking for companies that are trying to safeguard their futures. So the thinking has changed and there's tremendous public sentiment. So that's one part of it. The second piece is money. Money is required for everything in terms of driving change and evolving that piece. We've seen the largest money managers on the planet starting to put their foot down and say, look, this cannot continue. If you as a business refuse to move in the direction of sustainable progress, we're going to start to switch off the tap on your revenue streams. I'll give you an example. BlackRock, for those of you on the podcast today who haven't come across it, is something called an asset fund management company. They manage think of them managing a large pot of money. And when I say large, they manage about $9 trillion of revenue. That's more than the GDP of Germany, UK, and France put together. The guy who runs it is a chap called Larry Fink. He's the CEO of BlackRock. And he's categorically told, he's punished 53 companies, which I won't name and shame today, but he punished 53 companies in July last year, saying, you're not doing enough from a sustainable standpoint. So we're going to start to close the tap in terms of the amount of money that we can lend to you. And at the same time, he's categorically come out and said, if you're not focused on one of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we will not be investing with you. Now, a lot of that money percolates down to pension funds. It goes into other investment buckets, and finally, it goes to private equity and VCs or what have you. But it filtrates down into organizations such as the ones that we work in. It'll be swimming upstream if we don't start to make those changes. To try and answer your question on that, it's a case of businesses will differentiate themselves today, but it becomes the new normal tomorrow very, very quickly. Okay. So we're seeing stock markets, or even during the COVID crisis, for instance, money came out of the stock markets to the tune of about 800 billion in the first quarter after March. And 300 billion went into the stock markets, into renewable or purpose-led companies. So it was almost a case of how we invest in gold. During the worst crisis that we saw over the last century, we found that money went into companies that were focused that had a purpose-led focus, and money came out of companies that didn't have a future in terms of planetary and people focus. So I hope that answers your question in terms of driving financial outcomes.
It really does. Actually, you had me when you were talking about even just from an employee point of view. So people joining an organization want to believe in the organization that they're working for, and they want to be contributing, and that the organizational culture and the goals of the organization align with them. So, I mean, even that first point was a big point for me. You know, that if the organization isn't doing that, then people don't want to be there. And then really the money tap there as well is of course is a huge driver behind it. So before we lose all the engineers that might be watching, is it really, it's too high up for them? Is it really sustainable development goals? I mean, that type of thing, that's all managerial, right? There's not a lot an engineer is going to be doing, is there?
So I'm a technologist at heart, and that's what I thought. And I started this for my own selfish reasons of differentiating cloud, to be honest. So try to sell more cloud. And as part of that, I used to go to clients and say, why don't you migrate your applications to a greener, more renewable cloud? So that was my reason of starting this. And from there, I understood that actually there's a large appetite for this. So if you're an engineer, you're not going to be an engineer forever. You might be writing code today, but you'll be running a team tomorrow. And I also feel that you're the architects of today and tomorrow. So how you run your DevOps environments, for instance, are you looking at, and you might need a truckload of servers that you need to spin up for writing source code for whatever applications you're developing. Software development has a very strong carbon footprint today, which we don't realize. So can we just make sure that we spin up servers in virtual environments on renewable data centers at the back end? Simple things that we can start to do. And when we start to look at the amount of the server sprawl that is used in development processes, it gets quite large very quickly. I was reading a statistic just last night that private data centers today, not cloud data centers, churn out something to the tune of 3.5% of the global carbon footprint, which is scheduled to move to 7.5% by 2025. So in the next 25 years or so, expect technology to have a carbon footprint larger than maybe 7 other industries, from travel, hospitality, aviation, etc. So the ICT industry or the tech industry today already surpasses the aviation industry in terms of its carbon footprint. So if you're developers, engineers, technology managers, doesn't matter who we are, can all be better in terms of what we're doing. And if you're in the development community, I would strongly recommend to try and get more girls in STEM and try and get more women in tech. I think that's the biggest disparity that I see across the board in most tech companies. And I just feel that if technology is going to influence and shape our future, we need to have our entire population on that. So we need to be firing on all cylinders. So I think there are lots of things that we can do. And it doesn't matter what we are actually doing today, but I think we've got to be conscious about, how are we using energy? Are we energy aware? And also beyond the carbon side of it, how are we running our business or our teams? How can we be better in that sphere?
looking at just the carbon side of things, is it enough just to get a third party to do some offsetting for us?
So offsetting is a business today, so the best way to answer that is, at the end of the day, we got to emit less than we got to reduce our carbon emissions. So we need to have net zero emissions at the end of the day. Offsetting really comes in if a company is just going to plant trees every time they run their business travel checkers. I think that's not the way to run the business. The first step is to try and reduce your emissions from a carbon standpoint. That's number one. You can do that directly. That's super easy in terms of what you control, switching off the lights, making sure you have a renewable provider that's providing electricity to your facilities or DCs or what have you. Then there's something called scope 2 emissions. There's another layer to it in terms of employees using electric cars, et cetera, et cetera. It's slightly indirect. There's a third side of it called scope 3 emissions, which gets very difficult. So 70% of a company's or an organization's carbon footprint comes from scope 3 emissions. And those scope 3 emissions are usually the supply chain. So if I'm in a manufacturing or automotive sector, I've got steering wheels and certain parts coming from Taiwan, although my manufacturing facility is in Munich, Germany, for instance. How do I start to reduce that footprint? How do I make sure that I'm asking questions of my supplier base? How do I make sure if I'm a tech company, I'm not asking a 13-year-old child in India or Bangladesh to write code for me? How am I making sure I'm verifying on age? I'm reducing on child labor. I'm making sure that I'm not marginalizing women in supply chains if I'm a fashion company stitching a shirt, and making sure that women are only the workers but never the managers. So you can start to make changes across the board, but definitely, offset is what you'd want to do right at the end. It's almost to try and recalibrate the balance to make it zero, but it should be your last way forward, ideally. So sorry, I gave you a long answer, but I hope that gives you an answer that you can't really...
really fantastic, really, really good. And the thing I like when I talk to people about just the technology side of things, what always becomes apparent is that it's a much broader or deeper subject than you'd think. And just the same way, starting off this, where I've got this idea that we're talking about carbon, right? It's so much more, and it's so much... I was about to say more important, and don't mean more important, but such an important thing. Now, everything you've said, if I was a CTO somewhere, I'd go, this is great, but how do I get started? What can I do, or how can you help me get started?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. But it's got a really simple answer, which we've discovered as well, because this is quite a new area. As a company, we sit somewhere between a management consultancy and a not-for-profit. So we sandwich between two in the sense that we want to try and lend business advice, but we want to try and drive societal good with the extra money that you can make. So that's the way we set ourselves up. I believe the first thing that works for anyone who's listening and who's interested in this is to educate themselves. Education, we started backwards, to be honest. We went into advisory. So we started advising clients, and then clients turned around and said, this is great, but it's actually a cultural change. I need to educate my team, my crew on the ship before I can start to steer it in a different direction. So it doesn't matter if I'm the captain of the ship, but I need to make sure that I need to steer my crew in the same direction because they're in the engine room and they're trying to move it across. So I think education is where we start, where we turn back to, and we started to tell clients that, this is how you can educate yourself. We created a course on sustainability leadership. And that was really to try and dispel some of these myths that sustainability is not climate change. There's more. Climate change is definitely so important. There's more to it. And why should business really care about it? How does sustainability drive financial outcomes? This is not prescriptive in terms of, okay, make sure you throw the banana peel in the right bin or make sure you recycle plastic. Those are very specific pieces that you can learn and educate yourselves. I think it's about joining the dots in your own mind. It doesn't matter whether you're chief of staff or you're admin or you're tech or you're in finance or HR or what have you, you can make changes in your own sphere of work. And I think in the past, we have some college students who asked us saying, if I do this course, if I get certified, will this help me in a career in sustainability? And I feel that it's the flip of that. It says, we don't want to try and educate people to develop careers in sustainability. I think you should develop sustainability into your careers no matter what you're doing. And I think that's really important. Thread it into your DNA. So educate yourselves, number one. We can help, but there's so much out there. And if there's one area you really want to try and pick up on, I would say just focus on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These are 17 goals framed together. Think of it as the largest sustainability blueprint on the planet, set together by the UN in 2015. It's a 15-year plan set to finish on 2030, and 193 countries have signed up to it. So it's a wonderful blueprint across multiple areas. And you can pretty much do a health check and measure yourself across, what am I doing around poverty, education, food waste, health, life on land, life in water, et cetera, et cetera. It covers so many different areas. So educate. And then after that, seek advice from companies that can come in and help you with various pieces. No one is doing this perfectly, no matter what anyone says. This is such a new area, but get started. I think that's important. Everyone should just get started.
That's fantastic, and you didn't push your organization enough. So earth51.com, is that the URL for people to go to?
Yeah, earth51.com. We're a UK-based think tank, as I mentioned, and we do help with advice. But I think more than the advice almost comes second. The education piece is something that we've seen a lot of traction with, and we've had school kids from the age of 13 and 14 all the way to CEOs of large companies take the same course. It's the same thing. It's the same playground. At the end of the day, this is our planet, and what can we do to make it better?
Thank you to Akhil Handa for providing so much valuable insight on sustainable computing. And thank you for tuning in to this episode of DevSecTalks. Remember to visit the link in the description below for more info on this series. And be sure to subscribe and turn on channel notifications to be the first to know about our upcoming episodes. If you're interested in being part of the DevSecTalks series, or if you have any topics you'd like to hear more of, feel free to let us know in the comments below. I'll see you next time.